Thank you.
Okay, good evening, everybody. We're going to wait just a second here and make sure we get everybody connected in before we get started. Okay, it looks like our numbers have stopped coming up on our participants, so we'll go ahead and get started. My name is Patrick Lonergan. I'm out of Gallatin County. I'm the chairman of the Montana County Fire Wardens Association. Thanks for joining us on our second local government wildfire update. We've got a group of people here tonight to kind of give you an update on what's going on with wildfires across the Northern Rockies and specifically here in Montana. So we've got a little game plan tonight. We'll start off with Rich Cowder, the chairman of the Fire Chiefs Association, who also sits on the Northern Rockies Multi-Agency Coordinating Group. We can have an overview of what is going on at that level with allocation of resources in the large incidents. Then we'll go to David Hamilton, who's the training workforce development manager for DNRC, to kind of give you a kind of a mid-season safety checkup. Then we'll go to Corey Callanan, who's the co-op program manager. I probably butchered that for DNRC. He'll talk a little bit about resource mobilization and some stuff going on there. And then I'll wrap it up with a little bit on situational awareness tools that we have available here and any opportunities for questions. With that, I'll go ahead and turn it over to Rich for a situational overview.
Just first, if folks aren't talking, if we could have you mute your microphones just so we try and keep the feedback down as much as possible. So here we are again, and needless to say, the conditions haven't changed much across our state for the best or better, and really the ability to do what we're doing hasn't improved much either. We're still, as a geographic region, very short of resources. Currently, there is one team available in our region. Well, it'll be available tomorrow. And even if that team were to get assigned, probably no resources to send it. So the outlook doesn't change much. Our weather patterns are still the same. Some areas across the state are currently getting some moisture, which is good. But obviously not enough to change our long-term outlook. So what do we hope to accomplish here? Well, obviously, when you look back the last month and a half already, we've injured 6 firefighters so far. Dave will talk more about that as we go through. But the reality is that now, not only are our resources even more tight here, but our other areas, the other geographic areas, such as the Northwest, North Ops in California, those kind of areas are really starting to light off as well. So what was already a shortfall is becoming even more critical. So again, I think the thing to bring out, and we'll go through the different presenters here, though, is if you haven't, now's the time to be prepared to look at what you and your partners can do locally. What kind of robust response that you can provide, and what kind of systems that you can put into place to support that response. Because the reality again is there's not a lot of help to come bail you out anytime real quick. The CAT team, I believe, is currently assigned to a fire. We're utilizing as many type 3 teams as we can across the area, some of those ad hoc. But nonetheless, it's still the number of fires on the landscape are outstretching the ability we have to resource everything. So still not a bright outlook. I wish I could say it was better. Heck, I wish I could look out the window and say it was snowing right now. And that's a first for me to wish winter was coming. But nonetheless, those are the kind of things that we're up against. Later in this, I'll have Michael, or we'll try and get a hold of John Culbertson, if he isn't on the call, or somebody from the fire training school isn't on the call, to maybe get the latest version of the Blue Book, the Montana Mutual Aid book out to and get that posted to the website so folks can take a look at that. But again, remember what that was friends helping friends, right? And neighbors calling neighbors to request help. Keep in mind though, that Montana Mutual Aid really, it's designed for a purpose, where our federal partners and our state partners have a purpose as well. And to get the biggest bang for the buck, we need to use those systems in conjunction with each other, not in opposite, opposing ways of each other. And usually the Montana Mutual Aid is coming from a local fire chief out to his neighbors. And by neighbors, I mean within the state, versus a federal or a state request, even though Corey will talk about things that that can help push that through with DNRC's ability behind them. So there are some venues. We'll talk about critical mission task forces again. We'll talk about some of the things that DNRC has put into effect with being able to cover some backfill costs to try and free some people up in our organizations. And then we are working on some things such as at a governor's level. The governor's actually put out directive for state agencies to let volunteer firefighters go if they have them working for them, and potentially pay. Those things aren't all concrete yet, but nonetheless, those are things that we'll kind of cover tonight. So thanks for joining up. Wish we had better news for everybody. But here's where we're at. Here's what reality looks like. And I'll turn it over to the next speaker, and then we'll circle back for questions or comments after everybody's done. So Dave, go ahead.
Good afternoon or good evening, everyone. My name is David Hamilton. I am, as Patrick said, the Training, Safety, Workforce Development Program Manager for the DNRC. And I sent a message out to everybody today. I think that has made its way across through all the chiefs and through the fire wardens, but I just wanted to reiterate it tonight. I'll screen share it, but I will read this because in my mind, this is a very important message that we're pushing out today. As Chief Calger referenced the couple accidents we've had over the course of the last month and a half. So with that, across Montana, we're seeing record-breaking conditions and extreme fire behavior. As this historic season continues to play out, we want to remind everybody that the safety of our firefighters and public is and always will be our highest priority. This year, we've witnessed 3 major accidents in less than 6 weeks' time. I would like to take a moment to pause and reflect and wish those injured firefighters the best in their road back to recovery. Any incident is significant, and 2 burnovers in less than a week is worthy of a discussion at all levels of our organizations and with the broader wildland fire community. First and foremost, we need to protect ourselves when we engage fires. I cannot stress the importance of appropriate PPE, regardless of the fuel type or size of the fire. Prior to taking any tactical suppression actions, check that we all have on our proper PPE and ensure that your crew members are doing the same as well. It's still early in the season and we need to take sure that we do not forget about the basics that set us up for success. Secondly, we need to establish and maintain good communications when there's an incident is critical. Just last week, our county assist team had a new start in close proximity to their spike camp, and they had to do a burnout operation to secure their spike location from the other fire. Clear communication between the 2 incidents to discuss and understand the strategies and tactics was integral in keeping everybody safe. It is unacceptable to have independent actions occurring without clear communications. Third, we need to manage the fatigue and burnout. We're all witnessing stress and exhaustion levels that we typically see near the end of the season, and it's only July or now August at this time. Please make sure you and your staff are managing your workloads and abiding by your work rest policies. Days off are essential for our physical and mental recovery. We need to be mindful that we're already feeling the toll of a longer, more severe fire season, and we still have a long ways to go. We need to right size the expectation of ourselves, our peers, and the environment around us, and be mindful of our mental health. We need to take care of ourselves and one another and model success for our folks and our interagency partners to make sure we all remain ready for the many weeks to come. Finally, we need to make sure we're making decisions using the suite of risk management tools available to us. Risk management conversations should be ongoing at all levels of our organizations and as situations evolve. This includes weighing the conditions that we're facing with the amount of acceptable exposure to our staff, cooperators, and the public. There are no zero risk scenarios, but we must remain mindful of risk transfer, both immediate and long-term in our decision-making. Open communications within our organizations and with our partners will be important as we make determinations as to how we engage or disengage on fire situations and at what levels. We will need to make tough choices about allocating the limited resources we have available to us. With that, be safe, take care of each other. We need all of us in this together. And at this point, I just thank everybody for their hard work and their commitment to the service of Montanans up until this point. And with that, I'll hand it off.
Okay, Corey, you're up.
All right, good evening. Good to be with everybody again and appreciate folks taking their evening out. Can I get confirmation that my presentation is showing?
Got it.
Good, okay. So we'll get started here just on a quick little update on some local government perspectives from DNRC. First and foremost, like Dave just mentioned, we want to thank all of our local government firefighters, first responders from across the state, and the hard work you guys have put in over the last several weeks. We know we're maybe at halftime, maybe not, and we've got a long ways yet to go. But we would certainly be far worse off if it wasn't for the contributions and the response that you guys have made, that everyone has made to date in this unprecedented season. As we continue to move forward, good communication, cooperation will be keys to our shared success. And we ask that just everybody stays patient with one another, work together, talk to your neighbors, talk to the agencies you're working around with, and make sure we're all staying safe as we continue to move forward. So real quick, for a few folks that were not on the call a couple weeks ago, I want to touch again on the Critical Mission Task Force. Similar to what Chief Cowger talked about and the Montana Mutual Aid System, DNRC does have a tool in the toolbox to assemble local government fire resources to support kind of a surge capacity to ongoing incidents for a very specific task and a pretty specific amount of time. Since we talked about this a couple of weeks ago, we have not had to pull this lever, although we have mobilized local government task forces locally to support neighboring counties and fires. Couple key points, similar to, but is not and does not replace mutual aid and assistance requests to neighboring jurisdictions. Those still are in place, and an important component of our response is talking to your neighbors, setting up that response and identifying what that looks like before the smoke is in the air. This process, the Critical Mission Task Force, is approved and ordered and coordinated by DNRC, and it's really not intended to pump a bunch of resources into the interagency mobilization system. It's really kind of intended for that surge package type mobilization in a very specific mission and outcome, and a pretty defined demobilization time once that mission has been achieved. Those resources mobilized will stay under DNRC and local control. We'll mobilize it as a task force and demob it as a task force, and not likely that we'll move that around and reassign unless that's been pre-agreed upon. And then just a reminder, if folks are interested in this or have availability to support this potential option, keep in touch with your local DNRC office. Just recognize that those folks are busy dealing with a lot of other fires and other fire response related issues. So don't be overbearing. Just check in, maintain availability as you would for your normal protocols. Okay, last weekend, you may have saw an email come out from me, from John, memo from John Monzi, our acting Fire Protection Bureau Chief, authorizing backfill for option 3 and law enforcement resource mobilizations. So kind of at the request of the MAC, the multi-agency coordinating group at the Northern Rockies, we went into some evaluations on how we could potentially shake a few more resources loose from our local government partners. And one of those was authorizing the option for backfill in what we call an option 3, which is typically a career or salaried fire department and law enforcement resources. To that effect, we drafted a memo effective July 22nd, allowing but not guaranteeing backfill for those departments. All we're doing with that memo is encouraging those agencies requesting resources to authorize backfill when they request those resources. Those agencies, those ordering agencies, do retain the authority to approve or deny backfill costs. To date, most of them have been absolutely approving backfill, but just know that that approval is in the court of the author or the ordering agency for those. And we will reevaluate. We've authorized it for this season, kind of as a test drive. We're gonna plan to reevaluate how this works over the course of the winter. We've already been in conversations about backfill with option 3 departments this spring and earlier this year. We'll reevaluate and re-engage in that conversation later this year once the fire season slows down. But it's kind of a one-time only right now until we discuss that further. That approval will need to be documented in the IROC resource order under the special needs box. Just needs to say backfill authorized. And we encourage departments to make sure that that's on there prior to mobilization out of the station. And then to ensure we get proper payment and reimbursement taken care of for that, payment packages will follow the normal workflow and documentation requirements. We'll still need the cooperator resource rate form, the option 3 cooperator resource rate form on the DNRC Fire Business website that's required for all option 3 departments, just so we can track who was in the mobilized status and who was in the backfill status. Next thing, just to touch on, you may have heard in the last couple of weeks the term EMAC thrown around, and that's the Emergency Management Assistant Compact and the resources that has provided. A lot of departments in Montana are pretty familiar with EMAC, as Montana has been an exporter of EMAC resources, mostly to California in the last couple of years. This is the first time in anyone's memory that we've mobilized EMAC resources into Montana. And we currently have 2 task forces of type 6 engines, kind of 2.5, one task force out of Utah, and then another task force out of California Office of Emergency Management. Those resources have been in place and in Montana and plugged into wildfire incidents for the past couple of weeks, and we're in discussions right now with refilling those or extending those resources, as it's been so difficult to get additional engine resources to the state of Montana. This is a separate but parallel process to the National Wildland Fire Mobilization System. We've tapped the resources in the National Mobilization System. As we heard from Chief Cowger at the beginning, there are no engines available. If there are, there's 1s and 2s coming available on a day-to-day basis, but they're very limited. EMAC is a process that states have an agreement, state-to-state agreements through kind of a mutual aid compact agreement between governor's offices to mobilize resources independent of that National Wildland Fire Mobilization System. And we did use that this last couple of weeks, and will likely continue to look at that as an option to move resources should we continue to fall short in the National Mobilization System. Lastly, just a couple fire business reminders. As we mobilize local government fire forces, or you have wildfire parked within your community, just a reminder that DNRC is the mobilization and payment lead for all local government fire in Montana. Despite what some out of region teams think and whatnot, they cannot just direct hire local government, local fire organizations. The state office, local state office needs to be involved in that process. So just a reminder for everybody here on the call. We have a ton of local government fire information, mobilization information, payment information on the DNRC fire business page, including the MOB guide, that what we call the umbrella document, and chapter 50, which are the rules that we mobilize Montana local government fire forces underneath. As I mentioned before, make sure everybody stays in contact with your local office, your hiring office, and make sure that your mobilization documentation and contracts or agreements are in order prior to mobilization. There's so much stuff going on that it's really going to be easy for things to slip through the cracks and get lost. So we need to make sure that we're putting that onus and responsibility on you. Is if you agree to mobilize in a wildfire situation, that you're keeping track of that paperwork and making sure that it's getting turned in good order. And then lastly, don't sit on paperwork until December. The volume of local government paperwork that's going to be coming in for the state to process this year is going to be tremendous. So if you mobilize and have demobbed and you have that payment packet put together, get it into your local hiring office, and then just be patient with the DNRC offices as they process that paperwork. We want to get emergency firefighters and your staff paid as quickly as we can. But just like resources are short everywhere, firefighting resources are short. Our finance and payroll folks are also short. They're doing the best they can, working overtime to get those things processed and out and get your fire departments paid. So please be patient with those folks. If you have issues, you can always reach out to me or your local contact, and we can help facilitate that. So that's all I have. I'll hold for questions at the end.
Okay, so the next item that we wanted to remind everybody about is the fact that everybody in Montana has access to our Situation Analyst Montana platform. And real short, it gives you a lot of tools that you can use, whether it's a large incident in your community or initial attack, or you're trying to figure out what's going on with lightning or any other item. So this tool is available. I'll show you where to get it. There's no cost to users. It's unlimited users. But you can see real-time information that's being collected from our large incidents. They have type 1 and type 2 incidents in real time as they collect it. Like we're looking at Woods Creek here. You also have the ability to put a lot of local data like structure layers, parcel data, and see all the underlying data with it. Also, you have the ability to see anything coming through Wildcat or anything on a large scale. So you have the ability to look at MODIS and VIIRS. That's satellite heat detection on the ground. You see that data, as well as you have access to lightning data to a couple different sources, also in real time. Fly out here a little bit because we have some lightning coming through this afternoon. So you can see lightning at a large level or down granularly to help locate strikes and where those might be located, and a variety of other tools that are available in here. So lots of tools are available on the platform. The shortened version of that is, whoops, except I can't get to it because of Zoom. There you go. If you're not familiar with SAM or you don't have access to it, go to samontana.org. That's samontana.org. You'll land on this page, click on SAM account request, fill it out, and you should hear back in a couple days, maybe sooner, depending on the timing, with an account approval from Intera, which is our vendor. And then you can log in and explore around and see how Situation Analyst Montana can help support you guys the best. So that's a quick reminder and rundown on SA Montana. And at this point, we're open to questions from the group. So if anybody has any questions, you should have a raise your hand feature, and you can click on that and we can invite you in to ask your question.
Hey, Patrick, folks are waiting for questions, I want to throw out there a couple of the other things that they might see coming across that's a little bit different. As I mentioned, there really are very few teams. So locals are going to have to try and hang on to things as much as they can. But one of the things that we are trying to do from MAC is create these critical mission task forces, which in some cases could be the DNRC engines coming in, or in some cases could be 2 or 3 hand crews coupled with a couple engines that might come in and do some very strategic work for in a short duration time frame to try and hook some fires, but they're not going to be there and attached. So if you're in a position where you think those, I mean, usually there's going to have to be some formalized request for those, but in positions where you think, man, if I had 2 shot crews and 2 more engines or 3 more engines, and we could get this chunk of line put in that would secure this fire from coming into a community, you can push those up through the systems through DNRC or whatever systems in place to get that request put up and priorities put on IA rather than the project fires. But those are just kind of the things that we're trying to do to make best use of the resources as we got them throughout the rest of the season.
Okay, Preston, go ahead with your question. Unmute yourself and you're good to go.
This is Craig Hansen. How other departments doing it? We had a request yesterday to go assist the neighboring county to the south. But hell, I didn't have any trucks left. I mean, even if we did, we were running fires all weekend, and I mean, how do you, I mean, I felt sorry we couldn't go and help the guy, but I mean, we were dealing with shit ourselves.
Rich, Corey?
Well, the reality is you may not be able to, and that's the struggle that I think all of us have the mentality and the willingness to go help and throw everything we can at it, but then we can't necessarily completely leave ourselves completely stripped as well. And really, Craig, that is part of the issue as we go along, is that one of the things that we see is lack of resources, is the lack of people willing to put stuff up. It's not because they don't want to, it's because the conditions in their own areas don't warrant them leaving. And so honestly, those are just things that you have to weigh out locally and maybe make those circles again through the Montana Mutual Aid, or go, if we can't locally, who's the next available that might be able to. You know, and unfortunately, like you said, when Patrick showed you that that map from Intera, there's a lot of fire on the landscape right now, and I'm afraid there's going to be a lot more before we're done. That it literally might be that some of the decisions just have to be, where can we put resources that they're going to make a difference, and which ones do we have to deal with at a later point in time. And it's just like medical triage, right? But unfortunately, those are the conditions we're in.
Okay, thanks.
Hey,
Thanks.
Patrick.
Go ahead.
Patrick, can I chime in real quick? Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, so Craig, I appreciate that question. And this is Mike Malterbern from the Bozeman Fire Department. And, you know, in the purest definition of mutual aid, when one department requests mutual aid from another, it's up to that other fire chief to determine whether they can fill that order or not. And so I appreciate what you're saying, and that request came to you and you didn't feel like you had the resources to offer. And I think many departments across the state are probably feeling that pressure right now. And what I would just say is, you know, I don't think we can over communicate enough with what's going on across the state. And that means talking to your mutual aid partners in advance of that request and just saying, hey, this week it's tough. We've got equipment down. I'm short on volunteerism right now, or staffing, and having those conversations in advance. And I'd also encourage fire chiefs to also be creative. And maybe you can't give that neighboring jurisdiction an engine for a few days, but maybe there's some things you can do while you're still protecting your own jurisdiction to help them out. And that might mean, maybe helping them with some medical calls or some car accidents or some other work that they may be impacted by, and allow them to focus on the larger incident. And you can pick up some of the slack on the back end. So I would just say over communicate with your partners and your neighbors and find creative ways to help them, even if it's not that traditional way of offering mutual aid.
Thanks, Mike. Any other questions from the attendees? Feel free and raise your hand. Okay, any other comments from the panelists?
Patrick, I would just elaborate on Craig's decision to not go help his neighbor. That was a hard decision, but that goes to that risk management piece and that our own welfare and making a tough decision for the welfare of his own folks, because we're in this for the long haul. And yeah, it's tough to say no, as Chief Calgar stated, but sometimes that risk management process that we're all talking about, that's what that means, is that sometimes we have to make those hard decisions that there ain't none of us want to make.
Very true. Okay, last opportunity for any questions. Oh, we got Craig back. Go ahead, Craig.
I just want to say I didn't really have a choice because we had two fires going on at the same time on opposite ends of the county, which is about 80 miles one way and 25 the other. And I walked out into the bay and all I had was structure trucks. And there was nothing available. So it was a pretty easy observation or decision that, I just didn't have anything.
Okay. If there are no other questions, that'll conclude our calls. Greg.
Well, Patrick, all I was just going to say to wrap it up really is that sometimes our systems, we know there's failures and weak links in our systems, and this year will be the year to test those. But do rest assured that your cries for help are being heard. There just literally may not be anything to send them. So while that doesn't provide much comfort, I know, if there's an opportunity to send you a water tender, a leaky one, and one that's kind of slow, but if we can get it to you, we're gonna as fast as we can. But realize that folks are working very diligently to get folks what they can when they can. It's just literally that dire. I don't think right now on our last MAC call there wasn't a hand crew available across the United States at this point in time. We're down to one team that's available coming up in the Northern Rockies kind of stuff. And so that's what it's really looking like. And the question just came up, is National Guard activation an option at this point? They actually have been activated. The problem with that is while it's a great resource, typically our National Guardsmen are not typically firefighters by trade. And so they have to go through a learning process. And because the military system is very reliant on supervision, a lot of times there's not the adequate supervision needed to get them engaged. So a lot of times the National Guard is going to go to an established incident with a team that can have that supervision rather than on IA kind of situations. Having said that, if they can get in there, they can free up some other resources and have them out there and available. But yeah, National Guard is activated, both ground troops and air assets right now.
Okay. If there are no other questions, we're going to call that an evening and wrap up this call. And everybody have a great evening. Thank you for attending. And we will be posting the recording.